The project that I'm developing with other colleagues throughout all the University of the Art is called the Cultures of Resilience. And it's a project that tries to promote a dialogue and projects about what could be the cultural dimension of a notion of resilience that is becoming a very important notion in a moment like this, because resilience means the capability to resist in time and to learn from the experience when we are in a very risky society as we are today. So the link in between the event of this evening and my research is that for sure, if we look to an emerging society that has to be based on the notion of resilience, it asks for a new narrative about what is the well-being. And we know that the 20th century narrative, main narrative, has been related to abundance of physical products. And this kind of abundance we know that could not be reproduced in the future. So we have all to try to have a new narrative about reducing everything that in my view is not powerful enough to generate a new culture. Or we have to look to a different kind of abundance. And this is why we call it disruptive abundance. So we are searching for something that could be abundant, even if it is not the traditional abundance of physical goods that we have hoped to have in the last century. And here comes Josephine Green, because Josephine Green, that is the main speaker of this evening, Josephine, that I know since a long time, is one of the most active person in an arena called the social foresight and strategy and change. And in this arena, she has introduced this idea of the new stories for the 21st century. And one of these stories is exactly the story about the possibility of a new abundance that is based on different kind of goods that could be defined in my word, the relational goods. So those goods that are not limited by the physical factor because are based on the human resources, on the human capability to be human. And beyond me, the other discussant is Jeremy Till, and he's working on the notion of reduction of goods, the notion of scarcity. So I thought that to have somebody that is talking about the new abundance and somebody that is talking about scarcity could be a very interesting and challenging opportunity.
What I'd like to do is, in my 30 minutes, what I'd like to do is talk about energy, imagination, creativity, abundance, and freedom. What I really want to do is to look at what it means to be human. Or perhaps more importantly, in this specific moment, in this change of age that we're experiencing as we go from one way of being in the world to another, what it could mean to be human. Now, Ezio called me, I suppose, a storyteller, and fundamentally that is what I am. I am a storyteller. But I just want to say one thing, and that is I think that in our rational scientific age, we underestimate terrifically the power of stories. The power of stories to define us and to contextualize us, to tell us who we are and how we are. And to be able to understand that a little bit better, we really have to understand the concept of worldviews. What is a worldview? A worldview is a way of seeing our place in the world and our relationship to each other and to that world. And so, for example, we had the classical worldview of the ancients, and that was the Greek classical worldview. And that mainly involved a lot of gods behaving badly often, namely on top of the mountain. And then after that, that became exhausted. It was no longer useful or no longer, it had reached its sell-by date. And in came the medieval worldview. And the medieval worldview was about one God, almighty, all-controlling, and all-seeing. And that lasted for 4 or 5 centuries. And then that too became too restrictive for what it meant to be human. And so we moved to the one that we presently live in, which is the industrial, scientific, rational worldview. And equally, that now is becoming too restrictive for what it means to be human. So the essence, though, that I'm trying to tell you is that all of these worldviews, they're not truths. There is no absolute truth in a worldview. It is a narrative, it is a story. It is a story by which we live collectively and individually our lives for a set period of time. And as such, they come and they go. So underpinning all of our worldviews, though, and this is the thing that I would like to talk about, underpinning all of our worldviews is one mother of all worldviews, one mother of all stories, and that is, it's a meta worldview that has existed throughout these, and it is the notion that the human condition is based on scarcity, that there's not enough to go round, and therefore we have to compete rather than collaborate, and we have to have winners and we have to have losers. I would like to argue that, in fact, for the first time in our evolutionary history, this concept of a meta worldview, that we are destined as human beings to always be and live in a state of scarcity, is coming to an end, and that we can actually contemplate now moving towards an age of abundance. What does it mean to be human? Or what could it mean to be human? Now, fundamentally, what it means to be human is that we have a set of capacities that no other species has. And those capacities that are unique to us are imagination, collaboration, creativity, flexibility, and adaptability. Those are essentially the very capacities, the qualities that make us human. But there's another thing here that we have to take into consideration. And that is, yes, we have these unique and wonderful capacities that make us extraordinary, but capacities are not behavior. And so what is fundamental also in our thinking around the human condition is context. Because to a certain extent, the way we express these capacities or don't express these capacities are very dependent upon the context in which we find ourselves. So a good context, a healthy context, could bring out all of these capacities. A less good one will tend to repress these capacities. And I would argue that now we're at the potential and the possibility to be able to actually pull out these capacities into the next worldview that we're going. So our capacities, our context are the two things that are fundamental. And in this also is to remember that the context we live in the moment is one of scarcity, and scarcity does not bring out human capacity as I have talked about it. In fact, to a certain extent, it represses human capacity. Let's have a look at this. I'm going to narrow us down now to our latest worldview, which is the industrial market era. Now, the industrial market era was fundamentally about mass market, mass production, mass consumption, economies of scale. It's everything that Ezio has said about we live to consume, fundamentally. The whole of the model was about well-being through consumption. Now, a machine age has also a machine explanation of the world. And so based on Newtonian physics, we believe that the world was predictable, linear, deterministic, and that somehow we could control it. And then what we did is we brought in a wonderful hierarchy, top-down, command and control, fairly simplistic, authoritarian, to enable us to carry the whole thing forward. But things have happened in the last, since the 1960s, 70s, it's sped up. And what is that? It's 7 billion people all over the world, so lots of complexity and growing. But most importantly, it's 7 billion people connected because of the new technologies and social digital media. So you have 7, going up to 8, going up to 9 million people, billion, that now are all able to connect. What does that mean? First of all, it means, as we know, that there's a plethora of change in production and consumption, because for the first time ever, all of us can produce collectively or individually our own content. And we hear every day what is going on through the social digital media. To be honest, it's a Marxian idea, which is that when people take the means of production is when they are free. And to a certain extent, the social digital media is the machines of the 21st century. But the fact is that we can all have access to them. So we hear continuously everything from people creating their own content, people funding their own content, sourcing their own content. We hear using technology to make things, to fix things. We hear just everything. The world in that respect through these technologies has totally transformed. But it's done something else as well. It's for the first time ever, because all of the worldviews I told you about were hierarchies, whether it was the Greek, the medieval, God was at the top, gods were at the top, industry, science was at the top. It's flattened the pyramid. This is what's so fundamentally different. We are going from a hierarchy to a heterarchy. In this world that we're coming from, and this is context, there are a set of values and a set of behaviors. And the values and the behaviors over here are individualism, competition, winners, losers, and very male, very male. There's a lot of testosterone over in this one. Whereas over here, what we're having is a very different set of values. Because if we, in this complex world of 8 billion and growing, or 7 billion and growing, all with the means to produce, if we try to control it, or we try to have the values of the pyramid to compete, to have winners and losers, individualism, etc., we will die trying. We will be in constant war and aggression as we fight to try still to fit that scarcity model into the complexity of the pancake. What are the things that are holding us back from this new world as we go pyramid to pancake? One is the way we innovate. Because in the pancake world, in the pyramid world, we innovate very much with the idea that professionals should innovate, that, you know, it's carried out, people in white coats, that it's carried out in big corporates and organizations. Whereas in fact, if you have this complex world here, you can't innovate like that because you're having to innovate in so much complexity. You have to innovate in almost in real time, and you have to innovate many people working together. So innovation is changing. The other thing that's holding us back, though, is management. Because over here in the pyramid world, in the hierarchy, you have a whole different view of seeing the world. It's about, with the best of intentions, trying to control things. And it's impossible to control the pyramid. So you have layers and layers of bureaucracy and administration and layers of different organigrams in the big corporates, etc. Now, what that does is it just stifles any possibility of A, innovation, and B, managing complexity. So you just listen to the words here. This is the word of management: planning, budgeting, measuring, evaluating, organising. This is the language of creativity: questioning, challenging, dreaming, creating, experimenting, learning. Houston, we have a problem, because that's what we need to manage complexity. But in fact, we haven't caught up with ourselves, and we're still trying to stranglehold it back there. And so we try to control complexity, but it's out of control, and we're just getting our knickers in a right twist. As opposed to the one fundamental that will allow us to survive better and well is to distribute complexity. Take complexity out to the margins, decentralize it, distribute it, enable people together, collaboratively, to deal with complexity by being able to think and learn and act together in the moment, learning, experimenting, failing, learning, experimenting. That's the only way that we are able to deal with complexity. Distributing complexity enables people to work together and to think and act with agility in the moment, to create, to innovate, to solve problems in a process of experimentation and continuous learning. Now, the interesting thing about this is that and this is basically where we are, we've been centralized, control everything, control creativity, control manage, control everything. We're about here now. It's starting to work into a network, and we will eventually come to this as our future reality in the 21st century. And this is not about doing things to people or for people, as it was over here. It is about doing things with people and by people themselves. Because this side here stifles capacity. Remember our capacity for imagination, for creativity, for flexibility, for adaptability, for imagination. It's all stifled over here now, and we know it and they know it, but we're not quite sure what to do about it. Whereas here, by distributing and decentralizing and handing it over to people who live the problem in the moment, we begin to tap into and we begin to liberate those capacities that make us so uniquely human. This stifles it and this liberates it. What we have to do, and what is happening, although it still doesn't fit the narrative, is exactly this, that we have to go from that vicious circle, in which case I'm not very optimistic about our future, to this virtuous circle, which enables us to take control of our own lives a lot more, and also to be able to increase those capacities, because in doing so, in taking the virtuous circle, those immaterial capacities that are non-perishable just grow and grow and grow. We have to go beyond scarcity, it's that simple. If we don't, I'm going to use a swear word there, but you can imagine what it is. If we don't, we're finished. That's the evolutionary leap that we must take. I believe we are experiencing, at the beginning of the 21st century, not only a transition from one worldview to another, from the industrial to the socio-ecological, but that we are also experiencing, for the first time in our evolutionary history, a potential transition from a context of scarcity to a context of abundance, not based on material goods and resources, but on the limitless capacities that make us human and humane. This, I would like to propose to you, is the next and necessary evolutionary leap we must make to live well and prosper. 2 days ago, Brian Cox, our rock star physicist, has a new program started, The Human Universe. And I love this quote from him. During the shooting, I realized that we are rare and therefore valuable and quite remarkable and worth celebrating. So to paraphrase, ladies and gentlemen, a song of the Rolling Stones, you have the music in you. I would like to suggest we have the music in us. We need to play. Thank you very much.